Hey everyone, it's Erin, and I'm starting a new series of replicants based on Disney villains. And this is the first one of the series, originally drawn by Ken Anderson, a very strange mixture of Madame Medusa from The Rescuers and Cruella de Vil from 101 Dalmatians. I have some Copic markers here. I have a fine liner. I have a black marker, a pencil, a weird stretchy eraser. And let's get started. Now, who is this stylish character? Who the heck is this weirdo? This is a combination. Well, it's not actually. No, you know what? This is Cruella. I can't even say her freaking name. This is Cruella DeVille, the one and only Cruella DeVille. And originally, well, one of the concepts around the 1977 Disney classic The Rescuers was to have Cruella make a comeback. She was going to come back and play the villainess who kidnaps the little girl Penny, because, Cruella had kidnapped dogs, so why not bring her back? And she had been such a huge hit in Disney's 1961 classic 101 Dalmatians that they wanted to bring her back. They knew audiences loved her. But then that idea was scrapped. Luckily, I always think, go with something original, go with something new. We see Cruella come back later anyway, many times. So I'm really glad that they went with Madame Medusa. So the Madame Medusa traits here are the weird kind of alligator jacket, and then we've got like that alligator stuffed boa that she's wearing. And that's because this movie, a lot of it takes place, I think it's like in the Bayou, like they're in the South. There's a lot of water around. There's alligators. Two of her her what are they called? Like the bad guys. My brain. It's late at night right now. I'm doing this very late at night. But her lackeys, I guess you could call them, are two alligators. Anyway, they scrapped the idea. Madame Medusa was born, but this is one of the original visual development sketches that Ken Anderson did for the movie. And Ken Anderson did a lot of really, really cool character concepts for this movie. Madame Medusa was, at one point a sort of ankle booted, leather jacketed whip wielder. Like she had this whip. And then there's another version of her where she's kind of like a Bacall-esque grande dame, and there's just all these different versions of her, but the one that won out is is pretty sloppy and fantastic, and she just looks completely unhinged. And I will be doing her next week, so she'll be the next one that I do. But I love this image. I thought this was such a fantastic illustration. And Ken Anderson, who is an animator, art director, storyboarder for Disney, he worked there for 44 years. He had a background in architecture, so he did use a lot of alcohol markers, graphic markers. And he also used watercolor and gouache, but this one in particular, I'm pretty positive this was marker, and I can tell when I look up close to the hair. But I'm starting with a sketch, and I'm drawing on like a multimedia paper, sort of like cardstock. I should have used a layout pad. Layout pads work so beautifully with alcohol markers, but because the blending is just so delicious on that smooth layout pad paper. But I'm using cardstock here, and as you can see while I'm drawing this, my pencil barely ever leaves the page. I just keep it there the whole time as I'm looking at my reference, because I'm really staring at my reference about 80% of the time and only looking at my drawing about 20% of the time. So it's really about focusing on shape, focusing on the negative space, and, just really trusting, I think, the hand-eye sort of or the relationship between my hand and my eye, and not thinking of this as a figure necessarily, because that can be intimidating, but just, yeah, focusing more on the shapes and how they relate to each other. The one thing I wish I had done is I wish I had been more aware of the tilt of her head and the sort of flip of her hand, because I think that would have added, well, it would have been more accurate had I had her head tilt back a little bit more, but so often in animation these characters are they're really over the top. You know, their gesture is really pushed. That line of action is accentuated to make them more animated, I suppose. I'm using a 2B pencil here, which has a softer graphite so that I can do a little bit of blending and just muddy it up a little bit because it is kind of a muddy overall look. And I didn't have the right color to do her skin, so I thought I would just do a bit of shading with the graphite. And here we go with the markers. So I am not sponsored by Copic. I wish I was, but I'm not. But I do love these markers, but any alcohol marker will do. Alcohol markers, they're great because they go on wet so you can blend them, but they dry very quickly as the alcohol evaporates, right? So they're super handy. Take them with you when you travel. You don't have to worry about water. You don't have to worry about brushes. And you don't need a lot of colors because you can blend them. So in this case, I started with a very light lemon yellow, and then I went over top of it with a light blue. And then the areas you can see that are more of like an olive green, I did those areas in a warmer yellow and then went over them with that light blue. And I just keep layering in that way. And I do section by section. So I started with her sleeve and now I'm doing the front of her jacket. And the reason I do it section by section is because the markers dry quickly. So in order to get that really nice blend, I need to work quickly, but I also work in smaller areas so that I can work quickly and get that whole area nicely blended before it dries out. You can go back over after it's dried and sort of reactivate it. Like you're putting more alcohol on the page. So I'm just thinking about Madame Medusa and how she's a heavy drink. Like I think they kind of allude to the fact that she drinks a lot. Anyway, that's another video. We're going to talk about that next week. We'll get into that character because there's a lot to be said about that character. But yeah, the markers, you can keep layering them. You can keep going back and adding color. And I think what would have been interesting with this one is that green, that olive green, it is slightly more diminished, right? In the original piece, it has a little bit, I don't know, maybe I could have used a bit of pink or something warmer, but the blend did turn out nicely. I think the colors are pretty accurate, for only having in total 6 colors to do this whole piece. So I have a lemon yellow, I have a warm yellow, and then I have a light blue, a darker blue, a peachy pink, and then a red. And that's all I have, and then plus my black marker as well. Okay, so now we're working on the alligator boa with the incredible eyes. I love those eyes. And he's smiling, and I like to pretend that it is not a stuffed alligator, that he's alive and that he's really enjoying being wrapped around her neck. Okay, that's my narrative for this piece. Right? So did I mention? Okay, well, I'm going to say a little bit more about not Cruella, but about the character Madame Medusa, because she is the owner of a pawn shop, and the whole plot of the movie is that she wants to get the devil's eye diamond, which is trapped down in this cave between these rocks, and the cave fills up with water during high tide. And so she kidnaps this little kid. Did I already mention this? It's really late. Oh my God. She kidnaps this little kid named Penny to get down into the cave because Penny's so little, and get Penny to steal this diamond for her. And that's why they were like, well, in 101 Dalmatians, Cruella kidnapped dogs, so it makes sense that she would kidnap a kid, right? So yeah, but anyway, Madame Medusa also kidnaps things. There's a lot of kidnapping going on in Disney movies. The tail of the alligator, you might have noticed there that I started using a darker blue. So that darker blue, when I first applied it, I was like, ooh, it's really blue. But then with that yellow over top, it did turn into like more of an olive color. So it looks good. Yeah, there we go. That red inside the mouth, that pink inside the mouth is very, very bright, but it works. Yeah, see how blue it looks? It looks um, so cool, like in temperature. But then when you add the yellow to it, it warms it up and it works. Once you put the black lines over top too, like the black inking effect, it all comes together. It always comes together at the end, doesn't it? It's crazy. This movie, The Rescuers, um, I loved it. So dark, so emotional. I saw it when I was 3. Really, really hit hard. But it was actually financially, it was more successful in a lot of parts of the world, like in Germany and France, than Star Wars was, that came out the same year. That was a big year for me in movies because I went and saw Star Wars in the theaters and The Rescuers at 3 years old. Both of these movies really informed me and freaked me out, and I really loved them both. But um, yeah, and this movie, it also had mostly a female cast, which I think is interesting. So there's like Miss Bianca, which is the little mouse in it, played by Eva Gabor. And then there's also Penny, which is a little girl, Madame Medusa. There's Ellie Mae, all these female characters. Pretty cool. All right, just doing the lips real quick, getting in that gesture. The hair, I'm using a black, what am I using? Prismacolor, just a black Prismacolor felt. You can use any old felt. Jiffy marker would have done well. I do regret that I didn't draw the front of like her bangs the same way it's done on the white side of her hair was done on the black side. Like it was like the separate sort of bang area, but you can't really tell because it's all filled in with black anyway. So as I mentioned, I'm not sponsored by Copic, but what I do really like about these markers is the fact that they are refillable and you can replace the nibs. So if they get really gnarly and like fuzzy, you can replace them, which is great. So they are kind of expensive, but then it pays off in the end. Although I've never had to refill them, but you can. So here we are with the black gestural inking over top. This is a style that we saw a lot of in the 70s. It started earlier, but this is really when this kind of style started to take off. Ken Anderson being one of the pioneers of this style. And it's super fun to do once you get into the rhythm of it, once you sort of trust it. It's great. It's very forgiving and it adds such an exciting sort of sense of movement to a piece. And how I started drawing like this, it's kind of a fun story. I don't think I've shared it before. I may have shared it in another video, but back when I was in art school, when I first started art school and I was terrible at drawing, I was stood up one night. I was supposed to go to a party with these people and they just like forgot about me and didn't pick me up. And so I ended up staying at home and I was really bummed, but I put on some good music. I got out these watercolors that I bought at the Looney store, which in Canada means a dollar store. And so these super cheap watercolors that had all these strange bright colors. And I just started making shapes that were similar to buildings and cityscapes, really loose. And then I took a black pen and quickly drew over top of them without thinking, just sort of following the lines and creating these shapes over top very, very quickly. And I loved it. I loved the way they turned out. They reminded me of artwork that I'd grown up with, throughout the 70s and 80s. So I mean, mostly the 70s, but it was a breakthrough moment for me. And from that point on, I really played with this style for a long time, over top of watercolor or graphic markers. And yeah, so I really love to revisit this style whenever I can. So when I saw this piece, I was like, oh, I have to do this. And actually, a viewer requested that I do more villains. So here we are doing more villains. And if you have a request, so if there's a villain that you'd like to see me cover, I'm going to do these for the next several weeks. Every Wednesday, I'm going to bring out a new villain video. So let me know if there's one that you want me to do. And also, I'm teaching a Zoom class where we'll be doing replicants with gouache, and it's a 6-week course. It's 2 hours every week. Really fun. I've been doing it now since the beginning of summer. And so this will be round 3 or 4, I think I'm on. And yeah, it's been amazing. People are having a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun, and we laugh a lot and we paint together. And yeah, so if you're interested, I'll put the link in the description below and we can paint together. The next round starts on February 19th, so it's coming up. All right, we're almost at the end here. Last little touch, get in some, just make sure, her eyelashes need to be a little bit more pronounced and her eyebrow a little bit weirder, and voila, I think we're pretty much done. There we go. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this, and that you can come back next Thursday to check out my Madame Medusa replicant. If there's a Disney villain you'd like to see me try to replicate, let me know. All right, have a good day. Bye.